Hello everyone, Theophilus here. This video, I'm not sure what to title it, but I essentially want to share a little bit about what could be called the illusion of self-improvement. So, you could say that I've been on my self-improvement journey since maybe about 17 or 18. I'm 24 years old now. And there's been a lot of history in the short amount of time since I first found out about it. And I've learned a lot. And I've had some decent experience that I desire to share with y'all. And I want to share about this kind of gray area that a lot of men are stuck in, right? Where it could be like a cognitive dissonance, or it's like you're on a hamster wheel, or you're stuck in a cycle when you're on your self-improvement journey that most men probably are. Most men that are in like the self-improvement niche, I'd say probably maybe 90% are kind of just stuck. There's some that are just giving up and not really trying that hard. There's some that are trying as hard as they can, but they continue just going up and down, right? And so you could say that's where I've been. Just truthfully and honestly. I've had some high highs. I've had some low lows. I'm also aware that I haven't posted in a good while, a few weeks, maybe even a month or two. And the main reason for that is that I've been studying Charlie Morgan. If you don't know who Charlie Morgan is, he's been on YouTube. He's been purchasing a bunch of ads. He has a 80-hour free course called Imperium Academy, where he basically shares how you can start an online business making $10,000 a month in a matter of 6 months to a year. And I've been trying to get into that, and there's been a lot of other things outside I don't plan to talk about because I don't want to make this about like my problems or anything like that, or having a victim mentality. That's what's keeping a lot of men stuck as well. Being victim to circumstance. We all have masculine and feminine energy, and I don't want to go too deeply into this, but I believe masculinity can be described as logical thinking, and feminine energy can be described as emotional thinking. That's like a little short way you could summarize it. And the man that's the most masculine isn't just like the guy that's the biggest or the toughest, or anything like that. It's the man who can consistently do what needs to be done in various aspects of life. Right? There's a lot of guys that are big physically, and physical toughness does correlate to mental toughness. But, as you know, we live in the age of deception, the age of insincerity, the age of dishonesty, where even a lot of people are dishonest with themselves, And I've been dishonest with myself in a lot of ways too. I've made a lot of progress, but I am nowhere near the potential that I could be. So I've learned a lot, and you can consume a lot of content. I have probably consumed hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of hours of various forms of self-development content, probably from every aspect. Started from when I was 18, 19, looking at like NoFap, so when I got a little bit older and became religious for a little while, and then when I was about 22, 23, I really picked it back up, I really want to understand female psychology and female sexuality, which a lot of that, I'm gonna be honest, that can be a huge distraction. Major distraction snaring a lot of guys. I'd say it's important, but what's arguably more important is developing yourself first, having a foundation of a disciplined masculine mindset consistently, building yourself in your value, then having experience with women, right? Because this is a trap that a lot of us are stuck in. We consume a lot of content, a lot of content. You know, there was a time I was doing DoorDash, and sometimes I would push like a 12, 16. One time, I don't know how. I don't know if it was something messed up with my body, but I pushed 24 hours straight DoorDash. How I did that, I don't know. But one day I did it. One day I just got in the car and I went 24 hours straight. Maybe I took like an hour lunch break or something like that. But literally, I went 24 hours. And I don't recommend DoorDash. I'm just going to say that. I do not recommend DoorDash to anyone. I don't believe that there's really an easy way, especially for a man, to make money. And even if you do somehow find an easy way to make money, you're probably going to feel dull, you're probably going to feel unfulfilled, probably going to feel a little sad inside. And to be honest, you're just probably going to be just wasting your potential. It's arguably more dangerous than being broke and being poor because, like, you're content, you're complacent. And where I'm at now, I'm doing a little bit better. I'm in a situation now where I'm not really struggling about bills. But, like, I don't have everything I want out of life. So that helps me to see something to look forward to, a goal, somewhere, something to strive towards, right? But anyways, no matter how much knowledge you consume, wisdom is the ability to apply that knowledge. To apply that knowledge, to, you could say, walk in and represent that knowledge, to be an example of that knowledge, and to be able to teach that knowledge. Or you could say wisdom is having knowledge, discretion is using the knowledge. And you can consume content all day. Like when I did DoorDash, I consumed content sometimes like hours and hours and hours. I would not be surprised if I looked back at my memory and that day I did DoorDash 24 hours. I consumed self-development content for 24 hours straight. I would not be surprised. But anyways, there's no easy way to make money, I don't believe. Especially that's fulfilling. In the sense of there's going to be hard work that needs to be done. There's going to be some kind of work, some kind of discipline that is needed for a man to succeed in society. And if you were one of the unfortunate people, just gonna say it, one of the unfortunate souls that had money just handed in your lap, and you don't have any desire to strive for something greater, because there's still potential. Of course, there's major potential, right? You have access to wealth and assets, right? But if you don't feed that masculine desire to conquer, to overcome, to be better, to strive towards something greater, to matter, to be important in the world, you're just going to live your life chasing a little bit of pleasure, and then you're just going to die and no one will remember you. That's the unfortunate reality. I follow men like Andrew Tate. I listen to what they say. You don't have to like someone to understand that what they say is logically true and consistent. That's another masculine trait. Is even if you feel like you don't like someone and you don't align with their morals and their values, if you can't at least get the logic out of what they're saying and understand what they're saying logically comprehend and analyze it. In my opinion, you're not very masculine, and I don't believe you're a very logical thinker. And I think you're able to just be tossed like the winds, by the winds. You'll be able to be tossed here and tossed there and tossed here and tossed here based off how you feel. And that's a very feminine way to think, and you want to get out of that. But they quote Napoleon that says, "Glory is fleeting, but obscurity is forever." He said, as a man, you can bear the pain, you can bear the sadness, you can bear the hurt, you can bear the anger, you can say the misery, even the stress that it takes to win in life and to conquer and to be someone valuable and to be someone of importance, or you can suffer as a forever and perpetual nobody. And unfortunately, I see in myself that if I don't make it, I'll have to be that. And I unfortunately will probably find a way to be content in that. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But with this, I have something to strive for. But when I did DoorDash, I don't recommend it. If I get another vehicle, I might do Uber. It seems like that's a very reasonable place to work, service to be a worker in. DoorDash, they just kind of screw you over, I'm going to be honest. Maybe you can get like $150 a day. Maybe taking out gas and all that. They're taking out gas, and if you get something to eat when you go, right? You can maybe. But you're at the mercy of everyone else. You're at the mercy of the traffic. You're at the mercy of the restaurant. Maybe you can try to be smarter and go at different times, but there's restaurants that are always packed. And if the food is late because there was traffic or because the restaurant took a long time, you get charged. And I would not be surprised if I was the highest earning DoorDasher. I'll probably do work every 2 days. Or it depends. Some days I was working every day. Some days I was working every 2 days. Not to get too in depth and all that, but I was platinum for a long time. Months. But over time they revoked my platinum status, and then when you're not platinum, you get like no orders. You get terrible orders, and it's just a terrible, terrible way to work. If you have to do it, then I understand. Like if you don't got a new car, you got an old one. You're like, well, I gotta make this money. I gotta serve this food to people. It's my only choice. I understand that. What I would do is I would save up some money as quickly as possible. Right? Even if there's a bill I'd have to slack on. Do you want to take a risk? I'm not saying I recommend like driving without insurance or something like that, or but you gotta do what you gotta do. And I've been there, and it was hard, but I made it out. Yeah, you can consume a lot of content. The stuff that of course, is good to consume content, because the goal of consuming content shouldn't be just to be mentally stimulated and feel like you're smart because you're listening to this stuff most people aren't listening to. But it should be to train your subconscious on how to think. The things that you put into your brain are gonna stay in your brain, as well as your thoughts. Your thoughts are like trapped energy inside of you. Right? If you're ever working and you feel like I can never focus, my mind just keeps going on all this rants and on and on and on. I've been like that even recently. And there's a man, Keith Carpenter, Keefe space Carpenter. I look at his content, and he says that thoughts in your mind are just a byproduct of energy that's stored inside of you, right? And Charlie Morgan speaks about this as well. He speaks about the different types of rest and the different stages of work, right? So the different stages of work are like producing the greatest amount of stress. We use the example of this marathon runner who like swam for like 3 days straight, like literally swam for 3 physical days straight, and then his body just shut down, and I don't know if he was in a coma or something. It was some crazy extreme people that are extremely disciplined, right? Your body can endure a lot of stress and it can endure a lot of hardship. And there's a small point I want to touch on as well, is you have to compartmentalize your stress. You need to up your stress tolerance, yes, but that can take a long time. It takes a long time with consistency to up your stress tolerance. But you also have to learn to regulate your emotions. And you do that by training yourself how you want your brain to think. You do that through feeding your mind with the thoughts you want it to have. And then having a meditative mindset. I believe I've spoken about this in other videos, where like meditation, just focusing on your breath, what it does is it helps you be present and helps you to focus more on the feeling in your body and not the thoughts in your mind. If you can do that consistently, then you can train your brain to think how you want it to think. You can watch the thoughts you're having. If you're just daydreaming, you're not just having some like crazy, silly fantasies. You could stay, okay, wait, I'm thinking these thoughts. These thoughts are a waste of time. These thoughts do not matter. I want to think about the things that matter. And I'll think about something that I want to actually think about. And I'm training my brain to think how I want it to think. And then the thoughts that I'm having are more helpful to me in my everyday life. But even then, most of your thinking probably isn't really helpful. Think about that. Most of your thinking probably isn't really helpful. Think about if you go to work. I have a regular job now, part-time job. And most of my thoughts are just thinking about this thing someone said and how this kind of made me feel, and when I thought about that, and this happened a few years ago, and I want this to happen, and that happens, and this happens, and in your mind just going on this like loop, this like tangent of just emotional ranting. This happened for me specifically with like religion and politics. My mind could just get caught up thinking about it, religion and politics and philosophical things, like while I'm working, especially if you're doing a job that doesn't really like it requires you maybe to focus, but not to like think, right? And the more you're able to focus, the more you're able to conserve your brain power. This is something that's also goes hand in hand with that stress tolerance and stress management, is learning to focus and being a meditative mindset to where your thoughts aren't just going off so much. It's like you're consistently in a meditative state. So every time you catch your thoughts kind of floating, you're like, oh, stop thinking about that. Oh, stop thinking about that. Oh, stop thinking about that. Hamza, despite what you think about the man, I still believe he has a lot of useful information. And he says your brain's like a monkey or like a lizard that just wants to like go around and think about this. You have to stop. You have to train your brain to think how you want it to think. And you also want to learn how to focus on doing whatever you're doing to the best of your ability. I learned this about myself, and I think this speaks to a lot about how a lot of men think. They say, Charlie Morgan says this, I believe Dan Coe, Dan space Koe, speaks about this. I believe I've spoken about him in the past. I recommend his channel. If you're going to consume some self-development content, I recommend his channel, Dan Coe. He speaks about how to think in a very intelligent way. And he speaks in a way that like if you really take the things that he says to heart, you could probably break addictions in just a matter of a few months, consistently. And I'm probably going to use some of what he's saying in what I'm about to say. But a lot of your thoughts aren't important if you learn to just do what you do. Like, man, like our brains, we're kind of like hunters. That's how Charlie Morgan describes it. When we're doing something, our brain works best, a lot of us, when we're doing one thing at a time. And we're doing that task. And we keep doing that task till we finish that task. And we're not multitasking. We're not trying to do this and try 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 to do this. Because our brains are like flip-flopping. And it's like you got all these tabs open in your brain and you're just clicking all the pages. Right? And it creates confusion. It creates disorder. It creates chaos. And in my personal opinion, I believe women often thrive in that kind of environment. Women are naturally good at conveying stress and conveying emotion. They naturally are so well at that. And I believe it's just the female brain, female psychology. Not to just talk down on women, but that's just how women, what they naturally do, how they naturally think, how they naturally react to things. They convey the stress that they're feeling. Now, unless they've been taught some kind of emotional regulation or taught how to be more happy or be more positive or have a positive environment around them, they kind of just tend to convey the stress that they're feeling consistently. And men were able to convey the logic behind what we're thinking. Even if that's not saying men are the smartest, but men are always smart and all men are intelligent. There's different levels of intelligence. We know things like this. There's different types and forms of intelligence. But men, we think logically. And our brain works best when we're doing one thing at a time. I did this today. I woke up. I knew I needed to make this video. I knew I need to make a post on my school. I'll probably link my school, actually. I have a new free school account if you want to join it. It's a free account, a free community where anyone could post just anything talking about self-improvement. I plan to make more engagement and have it more, jumping, more popping, as they say. And you're more than welcome to join. I should link that if I remember. If not, you could remind me. But yeah, school. So yesterday, I spent a little while organizing my day today, so that today I don't have to think about what I need to do. I just looked at my paper, a little notebook, and I read the things that I wrote down yesterday, and I prepared my mind to do the things that I need to do today. And then, I didn't eat a lot last night, so I was feeling pretty hungry. I was like, I know I gotta eat. Okay, so I eat, and I got distracted, checking messages, texting. I was like, okay, this is a waste of time. Close app. I picked up my phone. I was gonna watch a YouTube video I was watching last night. I watched 10 seconds of it. No. I don't need all this stimulation, all this chaos. I need order and structure. I close app. I ate a little sausage croissant thing. Ate that. I had some blueberries. And I didn't do anything. I just sat. I just looked at the wall. And I ate my little blueberries. And then I was able to eat a lot faster than I would have. Then I was like, okay, now let me floss my teeth. I have little flossers, that you can get them at a Family Dollar. A good habit to build while you're young. Brushed my teeth, drank some water. Sat here, made this video. It's good when our brain focuses on doing one thing at a time, and all of our thoughts and all of our mental energy, as much as we possibly can, we're focusing that on doing the thing that's in front of us. I think that's how men work. So when I'm pulled in different directions and I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about this, I used to think that I was a little slow. I'm going to be honest. I used to think that I was a little slow. A little bit about me, I came out premature, 7 months instead of 9 months. Doctors thought either one, he's not going to make it, or two, he's going to be slower than the average kid. And then they tested me when I was like 2 or 3, and they're like, wow, the child's actually a little higher intelligence than normal. So it turns out it might be the opposite. But I spent years practicing escapism, right? Spent the first few years of my life, a lot of that time in front of a television screen, and just daydreaming. And I would do that consistently for days and months and years. I had potential. Like, I was pretty good at math and science. But I just didn't learn how to focus. And often, what I notice about my brain is that if I'm not focused on the thing in front of me, I'll forget. Like, I can walk down the hallway and go and use the restroom and be thinking, if I have a trash bin in the restroom, thinking, I need to throw this thing in the trash. And I'll be walking. And I'll start thinking about what I need to do when I get back to my room. I'm going to go outside. Am I going to go to the store? And I'll walk in the restroom, use the restroom, have a ball of paper in my hand or whatever, and walk back in my room. I'm thinking, why did I go in the restroom? Oh, to put the ball of trash in the restroom. I put the trash in my door, but you get what I'm saying, right? I need to be focused on whatever I'm doing, or I'll lose my train of thought. And this happens consistently, to the point to where the people around me would think that I'm like kind of slow. But it's not necessarily that I'm slow, but it's that I have not learned to think and to focus properly. And I've learned that about myself. And the dots just connected, and I was like, oh, so that's what's happening. I just need to focus. I just need to focus on whatever I'm doing and tune out all the noise and not be distracted. And I can do whatever needs to be done. And I would argue the most masculine men are those that have learned how to focus on one thing at a time consistently. Even if you say you're a father and you have children, I've seen men do this. Men that I highly respect, that are, I would consider extremely masculine, in discipline. Like self-discipline, self-restraint, mental control of themselves. A child comes in the room, they stop whatever they're doing and focus completely on dealing with the child. Whether it's, can you help me get the water up there or whatever. They completely focus on the child, make sure the child's good, in turn, go directly on doing with the other thing they're doing. They focus on one thing at a time. And in their brain, with that excess energy, you could prioritize doing like the order of things that need to be done. Right? So this is how men get stuff done. They just focus on doing the thing that needs to be done. They learn to think logically and rationally rather than emotionally. And for some reason, I'm not gonna get all political, but they say this is all toxic masculinity and stuff, but really I think it's just normal masculinity. It's doing what needs to be done. Men have always been the problem solvers of society. Men have always been the stress bearers of society. Men have always sacrificed themselves, their mental health, their well-being for the rest of society. It's always been that way. Society has always been built off the backs of the labor of men. Whether that was working class men, whether that was slaves, whether that was, builders, architects. Society was always built off of the labor, the hearts, and the minds of working men. And I have, old school views, traditional values. So I acknowledge, that we're all different and we all have our different identities and things like that. I understand all that. But I believe the majority of society functions well when Men can fully be in their masculine, and women can fully be in their feminine. I don't want to get too off topic here, but this is how men that are the most profitable, that are the most successful, that have worked for their success, that are the most beneficial to society, that are seen as the most highly intelligent. Their brain just thinks like this. They just think in these systems, and they're not distracted. They're not all brain fogged and scrolling TikTok and social media, and they don't have like a porn brain doing drugs and all that stuff. Excuse me. If you learn and train your brain to think like this and learn to have a meditative mindset, then you're going to be able to focus on doing what needs to be done. And I would argue that even bad habits are not that, I guess, powerful when you learn to be in your masculine. It's only, I believe, when a man is in his feminine, when he's just thinking purely emotionally, and he's just purely impulsive, and he's just doing what he feels like doing consistently. When a man's in his masculine, bad habits aren't even that much of a problem, I would argue. That's maybe a topic for another day. And what I've learned is that a lot of my life I've just lacked structure. Right? Yes, you have to build discipline through consistency over time. Absolutely. Yes, you have to break bad habits and build good habits. Absolutely. Yes, you need to consume self-development content to logically convince yourself of what's right over and over again and train your subconscious. Absolutely. But with all that, you need structure. I would argue that you don't lack motivation. The motivation is inside of you. Yeah, there's like the feeling of like feeling hyped for something, but most people that are successful don't feel that all the time. Some of them even barely feel that. So you know if you're waiting on motivation, you're already gonna lose. Like you've already lost unless you change your path. You need structure. You need to find a way to outsource all that energy that's inside of you. You're just gonna store up and store up and store up and store up until you give your energy. So you're just giving all your energy away to things that are not gonna help you. Whether that's a person, whether that's an experience, or a habit, or thoughts, even just thoughts. I can do this even if I've done it when I'm not doing bad habits. I've done it when I was on dopamine detox. One time I did it for a week straight. I was pretty true to it for a week. Like no high stimulatory habit. You know, the normal way men used to think, all throughout history. And you need structure, order. You need something to put your energy towards. You need repetition in that. That's what Dan Cole teaches. That we typically, especially men, we tend to learn through repetition. Right? Like, yeah, like, of course, children in school and stuff, right? Like, A, B, C's and all that, right? Learning through saying the same thing over and over again to where it's in your subconscious. Yes. That is how we learn. I think men especially learn in that way. Through repetition, through doing the same thing over and over and over again and making mistakes and thinking about the problem and then learning about the problem and then solving the problem and making the connections in our mind about how we solve the problem. Then doing it again and again and again and being able to then pass on the things that you know and categorize it and rephrase it in a way to where you can teach it to people that are even less intelligent than you or younger than you or have less life experience than you. That's how men learn. This is how I learn. And this is how to actually make progress on self-improvement. It's just a long grind. It's often not a fun one. I played a video game called NBA 2K. If you know what I'm talking about, you might know. But you essentially can like make a character. He starts off like 55. He starts off as like literally terrible. He plays like a large high level middle schooler. That's literally how he plays. He plays like a large high level middle schooler. That was probably my peak. When I was the best at basketball, I was probably like a peak, like middle, like high level middle schooler will destroy a regular adult in a one-on-one basketball. He'll destroy him in speed. He may not beat him in strength. He'll destroy him in speed. He'll destroy him in stamina. He'll destroy him in skill level. That's still pretty high. A fast 8th grader will dust a regular man. That's besides the point. You start off utterly terrible in the game. Like your character is terrible. And they play this, and the settings are really, really easy, so you think you're like really, really good at the game. But you're not. You're like really terrible at the game too. They just don't tell you. You find out the hard way. And then you have to. This is going to be a nice analogy. I've thought about this analogy for a long time, and I'm sure I'm going to explain it again. But you can look at yourself like a created character. I think they call it a CAC. Created character. Right? In the basketball video game, you can make yourself a slasher, which is someone who's really good at getting to the basket and going in the paint. You can look at a player like Russell Westbrook. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine. You don't have to know. But he's a really fast, explosive guy who just gets to the rim really good. He gets to the rim really good. And even though he's a shorter guy, 6'3", in the NBA is pretty short, he can get over the rim. He can dance around. He can get to the basket really easily. Right? Then there's a player like Stephen Curry. I personally like Stephen Curry. I didn't at first, but I've learned to understand this game when I liked basketball. I don't watch it anymore. I stopped watching it at 18. But he's still like a really good player that I like. You know, what he's known for is his shooting ability. He's clearly like the best basketball shooter we've ever had. Like, he blows everyone else out of the park. But Stephen Curry will never be Russell Westbrook. He's never going to have that quick explosiveness to get to the paint like Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook will never shoot like Stephen Curry. Right? But both are still decently successful players. How did they get successful? Did they start off like that? They were blessed. Both the men are 6'3", which is taller than 80% of the world. Maybe 90% of the world. That's nice. But that's not enough in the NBA. They found a play style that they liked. They learned that skill through repetition and making mistakes over and over and over and over and over. And how many shots do you think Stephen Curry shot? Like, you can't fathom it. You can't calculate that number. You could guess. You can like watch one of his games, and like maybe if he live streams 2 or 3 practices in a day, right? Then maybe you could kind of guess from all the way back in his shot, but you don't know. We found out about the man when he was like, I found the earliest tapes I have of him was when he was in high school, right? Something in my eye, but it's alright. The earliest we have of him was when he was in high school. But he learned how to shoot really, really well. And through repetition, he practiced shooting over and over again. And he got better at it. He learned which shots he likes to take, which shots he doesn't like to take, how he sets up each shot, how he goes around the screen, the off ball, the on ball, the playmaking. He got the injury. I believe the calf or the hamstring ankle injury that messed him up. But he kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going. You probably don't know how many mistakes the man has made. Yet, he became Stephen Curry through that we know today, through all that trial and hardship. Russell Westbrook, how much do you think he's trained his explosiveness? No, one of those players will never be the other. They will never be they're each their own individual, but they had to they had to max out their stats. You know? Stephen Curry had to max out his shooting ability. Just like in the game, you make a slasher, you have to get his dunk all the way up to 99, and his layup all the way to 99, and get his playmaking up to say 70, get his 3-pointer up maybe to say 70. You have to max out all of his attributes, and then you have to learn how to play the game. You have to learn how to play it again and again and again. You gotta learn how to play in this environment. You gotta learn how to play online. You gotta learn how to play in this mode. You gotta learn how to play against this player. You gotta learn how to work with this player. And you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn until your player is like 95 overall. And then you learn how to play in the park. And you lose, and you lose, and you lose, and you get better, and you get better, and you understand the game, and then you learn. That's basically how life is, right? We all have gifts, right? I was looking at Dr. Orion's hairband. I recommend him as well. I think his YouTube channel is called Psych Hacks. He's on YouTube and TikTok. The man is brilliant. He's somewhat similar to Ho Math, if you know him on YouTube. These are both, I consider, pretty brilliant men of pretty decent intelligence, and they explain concepts very well. But he made a video about height the other day, and I'm a short guy. I'm like 5'5", and he explained just how height it's a real advantage that men have, right? But we're all in the same game. Dating, many of us are attracted to a certain kind of women. Maybe some of us like a different skin tone. I don't want to get too deep into that, but like, we all want attractive women. Most of us do, right? There's some guys that have advantages you don't have. There's some guys that were born in rich families. There's some guys that were born with naturally higher intelligence. There's some people that were born and had really good mentors and role models. We're all playing the same game. We all want the same results out of life. We all want the same status. We all want the same. We all want status. We all want respect. We all want honor. We all want to live a relatively happy life, and you've got to work for it. But just like that game, just like those players, just like anyone that's gotten good at anything, you have to learn through repetition. You have to learn through trial and error. And you have to learn through putting in reps. You have to learn through making a mistake over and over again until the dots click in your brain and you make it. Let me know if you want me to talk about anything more in depth. I know I'm touching on various topics, but I just have a lot on my mind. And this is kind of what I did when I first started my channel. If you know a little bit more about me, you know that I had 122 videos. I was averaging about 2 views a video. And I had a lot going on as well. And I ended up deleting like 115 of my videos. And I made videos about it. One thing Andrew Tate says is you can't undo any chess move in life. If you're a man and you're looking at me as a young man, see yourself as a king on the chessboard. The king dies, the game is over. If you die, the game is over. But as long as you're living, as long as you're breathing, you're in the game. You can't undo any chess move. Life can force you to have certain chess moves, but you want to force the best outcomes that you possibly can. You gotta learn the game. You gotta learn, you gotta apply the knowledge that you have. And I believe, looking back, it was a very rash decision because I talked about many things that are deleted now and that they're not gonna come back. I'm not gonna get that content back. Some of those videos I got 100, 300 videos, which isn't a whole lot, but it's a good amount of views, right? It was a rash decision, and I believe, in fact, I believe that I was kind of not giving up, but seeing the results that I wanted, and I was like, well, I made this channel like maybe 6 months ago, and I'm not getting any views, I'm not getting any comments. I had 2 comments. One was from it was one video that was called "Why Most Men Can't Afford Attachment," right? I believe there were 2 comments, I believe, on that video. There was like a kid, like a teenager, and even if you're 18, the unfortunate reality is that society still sees you kind of as a kid. Unless you really develop yourself and you're masculine and you've built some kind of success in the world, even then, most of the world sees you as a kid. That's the unfortunate reality. And the unfortunate reality for a man is that he has to build himself and prove himself to be worthy and competent and worthy of respect. You have to build your value. That's the unfortunate reality. A lot of people still look at me as a kid. I believe it's a lot less than, say, 2 years ago, but I've had to build my value. And there was one comment from a kid saying like, well, yeah, that's why I just don't engage in dating. And he's a kid. I don't remember the user. Shout out to you if you see my face again. Shout out to you. One of my 2 comments. And like, well, yeah, that's why I stay away. And I was thinking, man, I've had that mindset, but that's not the mindset I need. The mindset I need is I need to learn the game and learn how to play it, especially while I'm relatively young, 24. And some people think, oh, you're 24, you're getting kind of old there, bro. You get old there, bud. And I am halfway to 30 from the age of 18. I'm halfway to 30. True. But if I build my value, life just gets better and better for you with age. It is the masculine advantage, I will admit. You don't have to peak when you're 30 or 25. You can peak when you're 40. That's what I want. I want to peak at 40, maybe 45. Still be nice and fit. Not the biggest, but I got a nice little decent muscle mass and low body fat. But yeah, so that was one of my comments. And I knew, well, like, you're still playing, like Hamza says this, Hamza. I still would recommend some of his content. Now, I don't watch his content as much as I used to, not nearly. I used to binge his content consistently. I used to watch all his videos all day, every day. And I was considering that path. I was thinking, make a few thousand online and move to Bali and be over there. And that might be a nice life. Probably would be. Probably would be a very happy life now that I think about it. But me personally, I don't want to shit on what the man has done. The man has done wonderfully for himself. And I commend and I highly respect a man of that caliber. But I want to be even more successful. If I make it, I don't want to be capped by YouTube. I want to be more successful and build a bigger brand. And, we all have the potential to do that. But I do highly respect Hamza. I do highly respect the man. I do. I still respect you, Hamza. If you're somehow going to see this video, I respect you. And everything you've done and all the self-development you put men onto. It's powerful. And I hope you do much more better in life. I hope you go far. I want to be more of a positive person. Just a side note. I want to be more of a positive person. I don't want to be the guy that just shits on other people and talks down on people. And we all have our mistakes and our flaws. But what matters is that we end up a better person because of it all. Don't be one of these hateful people, y'all. Don't be one of these angry, hateful guys that just hate on other people. If you can't beat them, then join them. Or do what they're doing. Or do something different. But he says, yeah, you have to. You're still playing the game. Like, even if you don't want to care about money. Like, me personally, I still look at a fancy car. No one cares what I think because I don't have that money right now. But I'll intentionally look at the car and I'm like, it does nothing for me. Like, it probably drives really nice. It does look nice. But I don't feel like desire in me. Now, what I do want is the ability to know that I could purchase a car if I wanted to. And I'd say that's more important. I'd say even Andrew's hate believes that and agrees with that. But even if you don't want to care about money, even if you don't want to care about women or dating, you're still playing the game whether you like it or not. As a man, if you don't attract a woman, you're gonna be lonely. You're gonna have your subscriptions and your websites. I'm not gonna act like I'm above it. I've done it before. I can do it, even still to this day. But it's not nearly as much of a problem. Not nearly. Not nearly. But I don't want that to be my end. 5 years from now, I'm at a place now where I've actually attracted a few women. I can thank God for that. That's nice to have women. But now that I'm even having women in relationships, I'm like, this is nice. It feels really, really, really nice. But I gotta keep working. Like, you don't just stop. Like, it's not just happily ever after. You have to keep going. You have to be a better man. You have to keep evolving. You have to keep playing the game of life. You have to keep trying to get status. You have to keep trying to get something. And to be honest, like, I don't even want to be like one of these celebrities that just make it to the top and they just sit back and kick their feet up and they're all good and everything's fine and dandy. My uncle says fine and dandy like cotton candy. I don't want to be like that. I want to keep going. And I don't want to be neutered by society. I don't want to get to a certain point and be like, okay, I'm good now. It might happen to me, but I don't want that to be my case. I want that to be my end. You shouldn't want it to be yours either. You have to play the status game. You have to play the money game. You have to play the looks game. You have to play the dating game. You have to play the relationship game. You have to, even if you want to be a loner, like, you still should try to have business relationships with competent men as much as you possibly can. Because that's what builds men. Community. You have to make progress. What I did when I deleted those videos is I was not seeing the bigger picture. I was thinking about how I felt. I felt that I'm not getting anywhere. But I want to go back. I want to backtrack a little bit. That message was just for anyone my age or younger. Just thought about one of my 2 comments and went on a little rant there, but like, my word to you would be, you have to learn how to play the game. That's the unfortunate reality. That's the unfortunate truth. But building yourself is more important than dating. Way more important. But I wouldn't just be like a social artist and just try to duck and dodge and avoid women every chance I get. It just doesn't work out for you. It doesn't end well for you. Unless you're like in some highly feminized, woke place where everyone's screaming kill all men. Okay. Fair. You can avoid women like the plague. That's fair. There's still decent women out there, though. You'll never attract them if you don't build yourself. I'd say that's even more important than talking to women and trying to get experience with women. Building yourself. My other comment was on that same video. And when I said most men can't afford attachment, I misspelled afford. And I put a T instead of a D. Might have been the one word I misspelled out of the 122 videos. And one guy commented, said, "Oh, it's afford with a D. Black people are so dumb." And you just comment to that. This person, shout out to you, you feel like you're doing what needs to be done, and I understand that, and I respect it. I do respect it, and I do genuinely thank you, even for the insult. Even if that person didn't watch all my other 122 videos, even if he didn't watch another video, even if he didn't watch one other single video that I made, even if he didn't even watch that video, even if he just saw that I misspelled it and wanted to angrily comment and then go on about his angry business, that's his right to do that. And if I'm going to be a YouTube content creator, I need to be on point with everything. Every title. Even every thumbnail. And I was looking at all that and I was like, man, I'm getting nowhere with this. But I was focusing on how I feel. Right? I wasn't seeing the future. I wasn't thinking in systems. Systematically. Diplomatically. Logically. Right? Like, look at the top YouTubers. Yeah, the top YouTubers are kind of just feeding the algorithm and going with the flow of the mainstream, and a lot of them are like streamers and stuff. Yes, this is true. Yet, they still had to learn how to do it. How many videos do these kinds of people have? More than 120? Yes, I made 120 videos in 6 months. And yes, I was maybe averaging out 5-6 views a video. This is true. This is all true. Maybe 4 views a video. So, I was just beginning. That's just the beginning of the reps. That's just the beginning of consistency. I wasn't even posting that consistently. How many days are in 6 months? How many days? 30 days in a month. 30 times 6. It's 180. I don't even think it was 6 months. But you know what? I can do better. And I can keep going. Even if I don't continue making videos like this. Right? Because I have a lot to say, but I'm also trying to focus on the Charlie Morgan Imperium Academy more. And, that's 4 or 5 hours of focus a day as well. But I need to do this. I need to build this with consistency. This program that I'm building, this channel that I'm building, this brand that I want to build. It might take years. What else am I going to do? What else are you going to do? So, this can be the illusion of self-improvement where you can make a lot of progress. Absolutely, and you do need to consume loads of content. But you have to make actual progress. I've talked about my hardships, and I don't even want to talk about them right now. If you know the things that I've gone through, you know. If you don't, it's cool. It's not about me. It's about what I have to say and the impact I can bring. I've dealt with some hardship. This is true. But I believe that clarity comes from repetition. I consume content or find ideas. I deleted work that didn't perform how I wanted it to. I also was not executing consistently as I could. It's like I've been preparing to be serious instead of actually being serious. And in part, this is a possibility as well that I was hiding when I deleted those videos. I pride myself at times in not caring what people think. But I think I could be coping. Just gonna be honest. Maybe I do care a lot about what people think. A lot more than I know. And yes, I do have to break the habit of caring what people around me think. I'm also a man that is still low status in the world. And young men are at the bottom of society. It's like the unspoken rule of society. No one wants to say it out loud, but every young man feels it. He's at the bottom of society. Hamza talks about this. He got out of college, and he wasn't the cool college kid that was just getting all the girls anymore. he was a unemployed, low status male. Now he also, I think he's kind of tall, like 6'1", something like that. And he built a body, a physique. That is important. A little bit about myself. I have a little bit of a physique. Quick side note, there's a guy named Jax Blade, JAXBLADE. I'm not necessarily recommending his channel to you, but I used to watch a good amount of his videos. And he basically talks about like cartoons and stuff. Cartoons and exercise. He like tries to blend the two, and he talks about the two. He's kind of a nerdy guy, but he's extremely athletic. Like I saw this guy's box jump. Look like this man, just the tip of this man's toes were 5 feet in the air. Like, man's extremely athletic guy. Extremely. Man. For his exercise content, I would actually recommend it. I would recommend it. Now, he does talk about like cartoons, which are a distraction. Absolutely. But his exercise content, I recommend. This is one exercise. This is a pretty extreme kind of discipline guy. Like this man, I think he injured his eyes because he was trying to train his eyes by doing something like throwing a tennis ball and watching it. Watching the trajectory and direction of the tennis ball. He was trying to train his eyes to look fast, and he like hurt his eye, like strained his eye by trying to train his eye. And he has this exercise where he like holds himself on the side, like holding yourself up can be difficult after like 2 minutes, but yeah, like holds himself on the side, like holding like a flag or like a pole, like hands on like a pole, and he like holds himself up. That kind of strength. And he basically categorizes physiques. I don't know if he still does this, but I want to use this if he doesn't mind. I have like 20 subscribers, so I don't think he'll mind. He breaks down physiques into 4 levels. There's level 1 physique, which is your average guy, right? Your average guy, maybe he has big arms, maybe he has small arms, maybe he has a little belly, maybe he doesn't have much belly. He looks like your average guy, like 80% of guys, right? And there's level 2 physique, which is someone you look at them and you think either they were a little bit genetically blessed or they have, like they train their body. Like you look at their body and you assume that they're training, at least somewhat. You assume that they're exercising their body. You assume that they're in the gym or they have an athletic background. I say that some people would consider me a moderate to maybe high level 2 physique. Got a little bit of muscle mass. I'm a smaller guy as well, but I got a little bit of muscle mass. Low body fat. Someone calculated that I was 11% body fat. I don't know if that's true, but it would make sense to me. I'm not an expert, but. And there's level 3, which is someone who's like a high level athlete, or like a personal trainer, right? Or like a professional weightlifter. Someone who's just been on it for years. Someone who's been building their physique for some years, and you could tell, right? The perfect body for most guys is probably a mid-level 3, high-level 3 physique. What they call like the Greek god build, or like the superhero build. Like the lean muscle mass physique. They say like the physique of like a soccer player. That kind of physique is like the physique most guys kind of want to go for. Then there's the level 4, which is like a guy that looks like he's on steroids, right? These are people that you don't see often. A little bit about myself. I have a little bit of an athletic background, but I have a history of pushing myself a little too far. I have injuries. I'm not going to say which injuries unless you've heard me say them before. And you might not know in this video. But for me, part of my discipline is working through my injury, stretching consistently, light exercise. When there's pain, when there's weakness, when there's tenderness, when there's tightness. Eventually, I want to get in that gym. I want to put on a decent amount of muscle mass. I'm like 5'5", but I want to get to like maybe 150. 150, 160. And muscle mass. At my height, that's pretty good. My height, that's pretty good. Why did I mention that? I don't know. Or, I guess what I'm saying is that you have to make progress. Right? If you're tall, you want to make progress. If you're short, you want to make progress. Right? If you have a high metabolism, you want to make progress. If you have a low metabolism, you want to make progress. If you what people call chopped, like you feel like you're like the ugliest man in human existence, you still gotta max out your stats to the best of your ability. You still have to. You still gotta do your best. And maybe you need like a guide or like a compass. Or like someone who can kind of like aim you in the right direction to where you're not just going here and going there. Kind of like focus and steady your aim so that you could be more precise with where you're going. The outcome or the results you get in life will be dependent on the progress you make. It doesn't matter how much you learn. If you don't have anything to show for it, no one's really going to want to listen to you. It doesn't matter how much you know, because if you don't apply that knowledge, it won't benefit you at all. A part of me might have been afraid of the judgment of everyone else. And that's okay. These are perfectly normal human feelings. Now, what you want to do is you want to get, used to being judged, and you want to learn how to care less and less and less and less. Alright? I went 6 months pretty strong before I got to a place where I'm like, okay, I made 120 videos. I'm getting 3 views a video. Maybe this isn't working out for me. I'm not getting the results I want. Things in life are getting excruciatingly hard. For me, at least. And I think I just would like to disappear off the internet for a little while. Not have people just watching my videos and then seeing me and then, I guess, laughing at me or something. I don't know. I don't know if I was so scared of that. I think it was more so just feeling that it's not working. And I guess afraid of going so far and failing, not making it. But 100 videos is nothing. 200 videos is nothing. It's the tip of the iceberg. You're just starting to break the reps in. So keep going. Keep doing what you need to do. Make progress every day. Today, order out your day for the next day. You know? Find like a few negotiables, a few non-negotiables for things you need to do every day to make progress consistently. and find some maybe negotiables, and find something you want to do on your off days and your work days. On your off days, you want to put out as much energy as possible on things that matter, depending on how stressed and mentally exhausted you are, because you may need rest. And rest does not come from playing video games as hyperstimulation. Rest does not come from looking at bad websites. What am I saying? Rest does not come from like chasing behind silly girls all day. Rest does not come from any of that. Rest comes from resting the mind, giving the mind time to think, time to process, time to focus, time to reflect. Journal. You can journal once a day. If you're not doing anything, you could journal once a day. You should be reflecting, even on your emotions. Some people look at the things I say, or the things that Hamza says, or the things that Andrew Tate says, right? And they say, oh, it's toxic masculinity. It's toxic masculinity. And mistakenly, I thought like Stoicism, basically a Roman kind of way of thinking, I believe it's just masculinity. I believe Stoicism and masculinity are basically the same thing. Just the Romans had like a certain twist and an ideology attached to it. I believe that Stoicism is masculinity. It's not pretending to not have emotions. When I was 17 or 18, because I was misunderstanding what they were saying, and I wanted to look cool and feel cool, I thought that masculinity was pretending to not have emotions. That's not masculinity. That's not Stoicism. That's not what it means to be a man. And that's not emotional control either. That's emotional numbness and dullness. And people that say, oh, men need therapy and all this, right? Not to like necessarily say I'm utterly against all of it, but I'm smarter. Not to say I'm utterly against all of it. Of course I'm not. But what I do believe is that men need to be outputting all of their energy as much as they possibly can. And when their brain is too stressed and too tired, they need to actually rest their brain, not with high stimulatory habits, because that's hyperstimulating and you're overusing your brain. In fact, I would argue that, if anything, that is toxic masculinity. I would argue that staying up all night, scrolling and gooning, playing games, scrolling social media, doing these high stimulatory terrible habits, I would argue that that's toxic masculinity. I would argue that that's pretending to not have emotions. I would argue that that's numbing and coping with your problems rather than actually doing the work that it takes to solve the problems. And that work may not necessarily mean working 80 hours at some job. It could mean doing, I was going to say hard work, but you could say fixing your brain, regulating your brain. You can journal once a day at the end of the day. You could just talk to yourself. You can be your own therapist, right? Not just emotionally ranting. This was what, and say it, women and people when they're feminine, this is how they can naturally try to deal with their emotions. They feel all these emotions and they just try to get it out. But I would argue that you, as a man especially, women's brains and their psychology is completely different. I would even argue I may not even understand female psychology deep enough to be able to explain to you how much more different a woman's brain is than a man's brain. And if you're non-binary or transgender or something, then you're a little bit of a different category, but you were still born with either male or female psychology. But you need to decompress your mind. You don't need to sit around and think about all the things that made you angry. That's not going to help you. Now, if there are things that are severely bothering you and causing serious amounts of stress in your life, what you should be doing is sitting down, even once a day, at the end of the day, and thinking, why? I saw a little stream with Kevin Gates and Neon. I liked that stream. I liked watching that one. I did enjoy that one. Little stuff like that I'll watch in length, here and there. Though you don't have to, but seeing a man that is successful and who's made it out of his circumstances, sit down with a younger man, and they were pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty funny. It was mostly entertaining. It was a lot of entertainment, but I wrote down what a lot of that man said. I could talk about it. I could flip through my journal, but you can watch the stream for yourself if you want. But this has already been like an hour and 20 minutes. Kevin Gates says, I'm my own therapist. I ask myself questions. And I think that to myself as well. I ask myself questions. If I'm at work and what this man does irritates me, what this woman does, and when I'm in this circumstance, I feel this way, and I have all these feelings and thoughts and emotions. Don't focus just on the feelings and thoughts and emotions. I believe that is a more feminine way of thinking. You should focus on understanding your mind and your psychology. Understand what's happening to your mind that is creating those emotions in response to the circumstance. Andrew Tate says emotions are feedback. I say emotions are a reaction. Kind of the same thing. You can take 30 minutes out of your day at the end of the day. When you get home, eat, brush your teeth, all that, bathe, all that, sit in bed, and sit down and think. What was really stressing me out today? It was this. Why did that make me stressed out? Because of this. Why was I thinking this? Well, because I thought this. Why did I think this? Because I thought this. Is this rational thinking? Is this logical thinking? Is this thinking helping me? Or is this way of thinking going to lead to more stress? That's how you deal with the stress on a day-to-day basis. You could do that 30 minutes a day. You can meditate. You could focus. You could still your breath. You could calm your heart rate and your mind. Then you can lay down. If you can lay down, no phone. Set your alarm. Throw it to the side, no phone. Reflect. Think. Let your mind ease itself and calm down. It'll be easier to sleep that way. Do all that, you can't sleep. Well, then you can get up and keep working. You can do some online work. But that's actual masculinity. This kind of reflection. And I think you could even get to a point where you feel like you don't need to do that. You already understand what's going on in your mind and why you think the way you think and why you feel the way you feel. You're not that moved by the emotions. You're the calm in the storm. You're the rock in the ocean. You're not being moved and swayed by all these emotions. It's going to sound sexist and misogynistic, but that's what women naturally do. They're naturally more led by their emotions. That's why men and women are so different, and there's this whole gender war, and you don't have to hate the opposite sex. What's happening is that men and women just don't understand each other. We're not taught the differences in our psychology and in our mind, in our natural mentalities. There's more differences than just our bodies. Our minds are different. Our minds work differently. But doing the other thing, I would argue it's actually toxic masculinity. This right here is actual masculinity. And then you can spend that excess energy trying to learn how to either solve the problems that you have to deal with or accept as a logical fact that you have to deal with them and you don't have a choice. When I'm working my regular job and I feel a little irritated about this, or I have this circumstance and I have this and I have this work, like, oh, this is unfair, I have to go through this. I said, well, this is what happens when you're a low status male. When you're at the bottom of society, this is what you have to deal with. And first, I would say it, and I'd be angry. Man, I got to deal with all this. I got to deal with all this. I got to deal with this. I got to deal with all this stress. I got to deal with all these emotions. I got to deal with this person. I got to deal with that. And then you just find out you're just mumbling and complaining, and then you think, well, all this mumbling and complaining is utterly useless and pointless. Let me stop doing it and let me focus on doing what needs to be done. And I would argue that's how you up both your stress tolerance and stress management. And I would argue that that is actual masculinity, and that is how men become competent in society. I believe that's what men need, to understand themselves and how to use their minds properly, how to be competent and get things done. I think that's all men need. But yeah, I went on quite a little tangent there. I've spoken a lot. I've said a lot of things. But I have a lot more to say. I may not make more videos as much, but I do plan to talk more and maybe talk on the different points that I've talked about more in depth. This is more of a freestyle, but I think that's all. Gonna keep going, and I thank y'all for tuning in. Have a great day.